Good evening, I'm Britt Clennett in Hong Kong and welcome to VTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. All 9 leaders of the 2014 Occupy protests are post bail as their sentencing is set to take place in 2 weeks' time. Just 4 months in and the central Wan Chai bypass is saddled with faulty ventilation vans as the government comes under fire. And the Housing Authority sounds its alarm over a surge in the sales of new flats by tender. A day after all 9 leaders of the 2014 Occupy protests were found guilty of causing public nuisance, a judge today announced they will face sentencing on April 24th. The defendants completed their mitigation submissions in court today. Some defendants pleaded for a lighter sentence, while others refused to ask for leniency. And Cheng has the details.
The 9 Occupy leaders released on bail were flanked by supporters as they arrived in court for mitigation pleas today. In 2014, the Occupy movement, calling for Hong Kongers to be able to nominate and vote for the city's chief executive, paralyzed parts of Hong Kong for up to 79 days. Benny Tai and Chan Kin-man, who chose not to plead for leniency, urged the court to consider Occupy founder Chu Yu-ming's ill health and spare him from jail. Reverend Chu said he didn't even think he could be released on bail.
Both are my good friends. I had no idea about it until he said it. I'm very grateful. I met many guardian angels on the way, so I only have gratitude. I'm thankful for them. I just want to live a normal life for these 2 weeks.
Siu Ka-chun, who submitted his plea yesterday, runs the risk of losing his LegCo seat if he's jailed for over a month. The same applies to fellow lawmaker Tanya Chan. Her lawyer highlighted the LegCo issue and urged the judge to give Chan a community service order or suspended prison sentence instead. The lawyer said it's hard to measure how many people were incited to join the Occupy movement and that the media can't be ruled out as an inciting cause. Chan later said she was being tailed by a policeman dressed in plain clothes and complained that it disturbed her supporters.
I think the whole thing is unnecessary and it's overdone. Please, who have instructed this kind of unnecessary and humiliating actions, please stop now. This is Hong Kong. Although we are convicted, we are nobody. We are so frank. We do everything so openly. But I still have my own privacy. And I want to protect my family and friends as well. So this is a warning for those who have instructed someone to do something like this. Is absolutely not acceptable in Hong Kong.
Former student leader Eason Chung said he would not seek a community service order. Chung told the court it's not just the 9 defendants being accused, but all Hong Kongers who participated in the umbrella movement. He said he cherishes all Hong Kongers and there's nothing to plead for. Among defendants, Tommy Chung's community service request report was the only one sought by the judge for consideration. However, Chung said he remained pessimistic on the issue. Meanwhile, activist Raphael Wong and former legislator Lee Wing-tat both said it was an honor to participate in the movement. All 9 leaders are found guilty of public nuisance and will be sentenced on April 24th. Ann Cheng, ViuTV News.
The Highways Department is under fire after revealing only yesterday that ventilation fans in the central Wan Chai bypass had stopped working since February. According to their report, 7 out of 15 fans in one ventilation tower were damaged. They suspect a contractor failed to reinstall bolts on properly after making adjustments to the fan blades. Part of the tunnel's air cleaning system was switched off for weeks as a result, but officials insist air quality hasn't been affected. The department says it's not hiding anything.
We are certainly not trying to conceal facts, but it's because once we knew about this, we have to take time to find out the scope of the problem. Because there are many fans in the purification system, with a total of 15, we have to carefully see how many fans are damaged and to what extent.
Housing Chief Frank Chan has sounded a warning to property developers over a recent uptick in the sales of new flats by tender. Speaking at LegCo, Chan voiced his concerns over the lack of transparency in these types of sales. Under the arrangement, prices for some first-hand flats aren't set and they're sold to the highest bidder. days before sales are opened. Chan said the government will look into the practice and make sure property agents fall in line with current laws. According to government data, nearly a third of new flats are sold by tender.
Besides tackling individual cases, the relevant authorities will issue a warning requesting property sellers list all the details of payments of their transaction records for the sake of transparency.
Former student leader Lester Shum has filed a judicial review against the government and the town planning board for its plans to earmark part of the central promenade from public space as military use. The former deputy leader of the Hong Kong Federation of Students said the controversial rezoning plans are against the public interest. According to official documents, the 3,000 square metre strip would be given exclusively to the People's Liberation Army. There's no guarantee the space would be open to the public when it's not being used by the PLA. The chief executive approved the draft plans in February this year.
Because this is a written promise made by the Hong Kong government to the Hong Kong people that the new Central Harbour Promenade is solely for public use.
Coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Well, let's start with a look at stock markets in Greater China. The Hang Seng Index slid 0.13% to close at 30,119 points. Consumer, non-cyclicals and energy stocks were among the day's biggest losers. Meanwhile, markets in Shanghai saw some positive momentum and edging up 0.07% to reach nearly 3,241 points. That was bolstered by consumer and healthcare firms. Meanwhile, Wall Street was rattled by trade tensions between Europe and the US. Trade-sensitive industrials were dragged lower following reports that President Donald Trump would slap tariffs on $11 billion of European goods. Fred Katayama reports.
An intensifying trade spat between the U.S. and Europe and concerns over global growth dragged stocks lower on Tuesday. Trade-sensitive industrial shares knocked the Dow down 0.7%. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ shed more than 0.5%.
I think many investors were hoping that we're going to get a trade deal with China. All the trade wars are going to be behind us. This morning, the Trump administration kind of rattled the cage, talking about $11 billion in tariffs, primarily on aviation parts out of the EU. And so I think people are a little bit nervous. Is there ever going to be an end to this constant trade war news?
The International Monetary Fund cut its global economic growth forecast for 2019 to 3.3%. That's slightly lower than its earlier outlook. Boeing shares fell. The plane maker delivered far fewer planes in the first quarter due to the grounding of its 737 MAX jets. Separately, the European Union said it plans to retaliate over Boeing's subsidies. The move follows the U.S. threat to slap tariffs on European goods as retaliation for subsidies given to Airbus. Investors bid up shares of Walt Disney. Cowen raised its rating to outperform from market perform ahead of a big day Thursday for the company, when Disney is expected to update investors on its big push into streaming.
Well, Uber might reportedly sell around $10 billion worth of stock in its IPO. According to Reuters sources, the firm will also be making its IPO registration public. If confirmed, this would be one of the largest tech IPOs of all time, upping Alibaba's back in 2014. The ride-hailing service is seeking a valuation anywhere between $90 to $100 billion on the back of poor-performing rivals like Lyft. The reports come ahead of an investor roadshow scheduled for the end of this month, putting Uber on track to pricing its IPO and begin trading in May. Zero orders, that's what Boeing had to contend with over demand for its 737 MAX in the first quarter. It follows a worldwide grounding of the aircraft over safety concerns in the wake of two crashes involving its jets. Michelle Hennessy reports.
Boeing has reported zero new orders for its 737 MAX since the worldwide grounding of what was once its fastest-selling jet. The world's largest plane maker, now facing its worst crisis in history, also reported disappointing orders and deliveries for the entire quarter on Tuesday. Total orders plunged by about half of what it was last year, and total deliveries were down 19%. The US plane maker became embroiled in safety concerns after 2 plane crashes within just 5 months of each other killed a total of 346 people. It's still unclear when the 737 MAX will be allowed to fly again. It used to account for nearly half of Boeing's deliveries, but Goldman Sachs predicts no new deliveries of the model in the second quarter of 2019. Also on Tuesday, Boeing's legal troubles grew as shareholders sued the company. Boeing's market value tumbled by $34 billion within 2 weeks of the Ethiopia crash. The new lawsuit accuses the plane maker of defrauding shareholders by concealing shortcomings in safety. According to the complaint, Boeing, quote, effectively put profitability and growth ahead of airplane safety and honesty. It accuses the company of rushing the 737 MAX into the market to compete with its longtime rival Airbus. A Boeing spokesman had no immediate comment. The US plane maker is still ahead of its European challenger. Airbus reported last week a negative net order for the first 3 months of 2019, after more than 100 cancellations for its aircraft.
Well, shares in Australia's casino giant Crown Resorts tumbled 10% after Las Vegas's Wynn Resorts walked out over talks of a $7.1 billion buyout. This just a day after Crown's shares soared over reports of the takeover by Wynn. The American-based casino company allegedly abandoned those talks because details of the offer had been leaked to an Australian newspaper. That report was later confirmed by Crown. The deal would likely have given one of the world's biggest casino companies a foothold in the Australian market, which is popular with Chinese tourists. Time for a break now, but do stay with us. Up next, while Hong Kong battles with a measles outbreak, New York City appears to have problems of its own. The mayor there has called a state of emergency and threatened get vaccinated or face a fine. More on that in just a moment.
Any allergies?